Have you ever noticed how some people just disappear from social circles without a trace? This isn't about physically vanishing, but a silent withdrawal from the dynamics that most people consider normal. They are no longer as present at parties, on social media, or in superficial discussions. It's as if an invisible filter separates them from the frenetic pace of the world. This intrigues those who watch from the outside, but for those living it, it makes perfect sense. The core reason for this disappearance is tied to a deep spiritual awakening. When consciousness expands, a person begins to see that much of what drives society is empty, repetitive, and without real purpose. What once seemed normal now starts to feel suffocating and unnecessary. This perceptual shift creates an almost instinctive need to pull away. It's as if the soul can no longer bear certain vibrations. But here is the question that makes it all the more enigmatic. This withdrawal isn't just a rational choice. It's the result of an internal transformation that often happens unavoidably. The person doesn't plan to distance themselves. They simply feel they no longer belong in the same places and dynamics. And for those who have never gone through this process, it sounds like a true mystery. Throughout this video, we'll explore in depth why this phenomenon occurs and how it manifests silently, yet powerfully. You'll understand the invisible triggers that lead so many awakened people to seek silence, isolation, or new environments. And perhaps by identifying with it, you'll notice signs that are also happening within you. Get ready, because what you're about to discover here may change the way you see your own relationships and choices. If you've ever felt that you no longer fit into certain contexts, you'll find explanations that will finally make sense. And if you've never been through it, you'll understand why more and more spiritually awake people are disappearing from society. Quietly, but for a reason far deeper than you can imagine. There's a moment when a person realizes that what they used to call normal life no longer makes sense. It's a silent shock, almost as if the heart begins to see what the eyes have always ignored. This spiritual awakening reveals that the rush, the excesses, and even the pointless conversations were just distractions. Suddenly everything feels empty. The mind asks itself, how did I not see this before? It's like waking up in the middle of a loud party, where everyone seems to be having fun, but you can clearly hear that the music is offbeat. The laughter sounds mechanical, the dancing seems rehearsed, and the sparkle in others' eyes is no longer convincing. This is the silent disappearance that begins from within. You're still in the same place, but you no longer belong. The shock comes precisely from this invisible distance. Common situations, like endlessly scrolling through your feed, start to genuinely bother you. It used to be a pastime. Now it feels like an unconscious society on a loop. Superficial conversations, the pointless hustle, office gossip, everything that once went unnoticed now carries a different weight. The heart asks for depth but finds only repetition. This is where the estrangement from the world is born. Some people report that after this awakening, they spend days feeling out of place, as if there's no right place for them to be. This is the beginning of a shift in values. What once fed you no longer nourishes you. A person who loved clubbing might start craving silence. Someone obsessed with material achievements might suddenly feel empty, even after reaching their goals. The scenery is the same, but the meaning has vanished. And it is in this emptiness that the inner calling begins to manifest. It doesn't appear as a clear voice, but as a persistent discomfort, a nagging feeling that insists there is something more beyond the surface. It's the beginning of a journey that can lead to temporary isolation, a review of one's choices, and, inevitably, the search for authenticity. But this is only the first step, as something even more profound awaits just ahead. After the shock of a spiritual awakening, an even more intense perception arises. The feeling that certain environments seem to drain all your vitality. Crowded places, full of noise and haste, which were once tolerable, now seem unbearable. The person discovers it's not them being dramatic, but rather energetic sensitivity. The body speaks through fatigue, and the mind begs for silence. It's almost impossible to ignore this call. Imagine walking into a meeting where everyone is laughing at silly things, while inside, all you want is to leave. This is a practical example of how much collective energy can affect you. It's as if the vibration of the environment is misaligned with your own. The superficiality that the unconscious society feeds on becomes heavy, and you realize that staying there is like carrying an invisible burden. It's truly draining. A good analogy is an electrical storm. The awakened person feels as if they are standing under one all the time. The constant noise, the invisible shocks, the pressure in the air. There is no rest, and in the midst of this storm, the need to seek refuge arises. This silent disappearance from social life often begins here, as an attempt to protect oneself. It's not an escape, it's self-preservation. In practice, many find relief in small changes, swapping malls for walks in nature, turning off notifications to preserve their focus, reducing contact with people who only bring gossip. It seems simple, but these are actions that restore vital energy. Books like Stillness Speaks by Eckhart Tolle or The Tao of Physics by Fritjof Capra help us understand that this discomfort is a sign of alignment, not weakness. Over time, the person learns to differentiate what nourishes from what depletes. A genuine conversation with a close friend can recharge you more than any party. Contact with nature can heal more than entire days of artificial distractions. This shift in values gradually takes root, but it inevitably leads to new choices. Choices that go far beyond simply liking or disliking something. After experiencing energetic sensitivity firsthand, the next step is inevitable. Your values begin to transform. What once seemed like a priority, status, consumerism, the daily grind, loses its shine. A desire for simplicity emerges, for less accumulation and more essence. It's as if the soul says, "I've carried enough weight." This is the point where one's external life begins to quietly reconfigure itself. It's at this stage that many trade noise for silence. The search for nature and solitude grows organically. A quiet afternoon in the countryside, the sound of birds, even a long, unhurried bath start to hold more value than bustling parties. This is not a forced renunciation, but a consequence of spiritual awakening. What once fed the ego no longer satisfies the soul. Historically, this is nothing new. Monks, sages, and even philosophers like Seneca spoke of this shift in values. They withdrew from society not out of contempt, but out of clarity. Realizing the futility of the incessant search for more, they opted for less. It's what many today call minimalism, but in essence, it's the same ancient quest. To live with what is necessary, connected to what is essential. In practice, this transformation can manifest in various ways. A person might feel the need to downsize their wardrobe, sell objects that only take up space, or even reorganize their routine to include walks outdoors. Another might feel the impulse to start a garden, cook their own food, or learn to meditate. Each small change represents the beginning of a transformed return to oneself. And in this process, the contrast with the unconscious society becomes even more evident. While many chase after excess, the awakened person begins to see wealth in simple details. The morning silence, reading a good book, the company of those who bring peace. It's as if the scales have tipped, and what seemed unimportant becomes indispensable. But this transition still hides a conflict, the clash between the persona and authenticity. After the shift in values, an inevitable dilemma arises, the struggle between the persona and authenticity. Society teaches us from an early age to wear masks, to play roles in order to be accepted, the successful professional, the ever-available friend, the perfect child. But when the inner calling grows stronger, keeping up this act becomes almost impossible. The soul craves coherence, and the body feels the weight of the silent lie. This is where many begin to experience a kind of chronic discomfort in their own social roles. The elegant work clothes no longer match how they feel inside. The rehearsed speech in meetings sounds hollow, and even the automatic smiles feel fake. This fracture between who the person is and who they have to appear to be creates an invisible psychic exhaustion, difficult to explain to those still living through their persona. A clear example is someone who quits a corporate job to live a simpler, but more truthful life. It could be the executive who opens a small coffee shop, the lawyer who decides to teach yoga, or the doctor who trades the hospital for holistic practices. To others, it seems like madness. To the one who has awakened, it is liberation. It's the silent disappearance of the persona and the birth of authenticity. In practice, upholding authenticity requires courage. It requires saying no when everyone else says yes, and it requires owning choices that may bring judgment. Reading books like Daring Greatly by Brené Brown can help one understand that vulnerability is strength, not weakness. Keeping a journal, practicing meditation, or even seeking therapy are tools that help dissolve the persona and get closer to one's essence. It's a daily exercise in truth. But this transition doesn't happen without conflict. The unconscious society demands performance, results, appearances, and when someone chooses authenticity, they break invisible contracts with the collective. It's at this point that many feel the weight of isolation and the fatigue of maintaining awareness amidst the noise. The next step of this journey reveals just how silently this can drain the vitality of someone who is awake. There comes a point when maintaining consciousness in the midst of an unconscious society becomes too heavy a burden. It's not just psychological, it's physical. Energy seems to be drained in every artificial environment, every empty conversation, every social demand that calls for the persona instead of the essence. This wear and tear doesn't show up on medical exams, but it quietly corrodes you from the inside. It's the psychic burnout that few know how to name. Imagine swimming against an endless tide. With every stroke, the current pushes you back, demanding more strength, more endurance. This is exactly how many awakened people describe their daily lives. A constant effort to maintain one's integrity in a world that demands conformity. On the outside, they may seem strong. On the inside, they are exhausted. This is the silent disappearance that happens, little by little. Teachers, therapists, healthcare professionals, or even just mindful friends report collapses that force them to rethink their lifestyles. Not from a lack of ability, but from overexposure to the collective noise. Some develop anxiety, others experience burnout, and some simply fall ill for no apparent reason. The soul can no longer bear living disconnected from authenticity. This is the price of staying awake in a world that insists on sleeping. There are strategies to deal with this, but they require discipline. Practices like yoga, conscious breathing, or daily walks in nature act as a vital recharge. Reading works like The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh can provide practical tools to realign one's energy. Even the choice to reduce digital interactions proves to be powerful. These are small rituals that help transform the burden into a lesson. And when this exhaustion reaches its limit, an invisible force guides the person away from the center of the commotion. The inner calling begins to whisper, "Retreat. It's time to preserve yourself." Many interpret this move as an escape, but in truth it embodies the hermit archetype. The withdrawal becomes not just necessary, but inevitable. And it is precisely in this retreat that a new stage of the journey begins to unfold. When psychic exhaustion reaches its peak, withdrawal becomes almost inevitable. It's at this point that many embody, without realizing it, the hermit archetype. Contrary to what it may seem, this isn't about abandonment or escape, but about preparation. It's as if the soul is saying, "I need to step away to put myself back together." This often silent withdrawal is the beginning of an inner gestation. Carl Jung saw this movement as an essential part of the hero's journey. The hero retreats, not to disappear, but to rebuild in silence. The silent disappearance is, in fact, the space where the seeds of transformation are planted. In seclusion, the mind reorganizes, the body recovers energy, and the spirit is strengthened. It is a time of inner alchemy, invisible to the eyes of the unconscious society, Examples of this are abundant. The artist who vanishes for years and returns with a masterpiece that touches generations. The therapist who closes their practice for months and comes back with new methods. The traveler who isolates themselves on a mountain and returns with a renewed vision of life. This is the potential for a transformed return, the pause before the leap. Without this retreat, energy cannot regenerate. In practice, this calling can manifest in simple ways. Disconnecting from social media for a while, spending days in contact with nature, or even radically changing one's routine to find silence again. It's in this space that the inner calling echoes with greater clarity. Contemplative practices like deep meditation or spiritual retreats act as portals to access this new dimension of oneself. And even though it may seem like a break from the world, this retreat prepares the ground for something greater. For those who withdraw, do not do so forever. They return, but they return different. They return with a clearer gaze, a more solid presence, a firmer voice. The hermit archetype is, therefore, the passage to the next stage, the one where the person returns not as they were when they left, but as someone profoundly transformed. After living out the hermit archetype, the person returns to human society, but they no longer fit into the same old mold. It's as if they have passed through an invisible portal. They look at life with different eyes, perceive what was once imperceptible, and can no longer conform to the old way of being. This transformed return changes not only their perspective, but the way they walk through the world. Curiously, many do not return to the center of society, but to its fringes. They create alternative communities, study groups, social projects, or conscious businesses. This transformed return rarely means stepping back onto the main stage, but rather planting new seeds in fertile, forgotten ground. The impact isn't one of quantity, but of quality. They are small gestures that radiate transformation. A clear example is people who leave large corporations to found local impact projects, alternative schools, community gardens, healing spaces. They don't seek fame, they seek coherence. Another example is the artist who trades major galleries for independent work, reaching fewer people but touching them more deeply. This is the inner calling, leading to the creation of new paths, far from the superficiality of the unconscious society. In practice, this return can translate into choices that seem strange to outside observers. A simpler life, less consumption, more time with family, more contact with nature. The focus shifts from being seen to being whole. It is here that the shift in values manifests forcefully, showing that true success is not in what one accumulates, but in what one shares. This movement is much like the analogy of planting seeds in empty lots, not in the main square. The silent disappearance is not absence, but repositioning. Those who awaken don't abandon the world. They just find a new way of being in it, one more aligned with their truth. And at this point, an unavoidable question arises, echoing within each viewer. Do you feel this calling too? Perhaps, as you read these words, you realize that much of what has been described resonates within you. That feeling of no longer fitting in certain places, of not belonging in certain conversations, of being tired of the meaningless rush of the unconscious society. This discomfort is not a weakness, nor is it a flaw. It is a sign of spiritual awakening, a call that comes to few, but transforms those who hear it. Many people believe there's something wrong with them for not being able to uphold the old masks. But what if this discomfort is actually proof that you are moving forward? This silent disappearance isn't a mistake. It's part of the process. You are shifting from living for the persona to living for authenticity. And that requires courage. Perhaps the greatest courage of all. What seems like isolation may, in fact, be the beginning of a new encounter with yourself. The heart asks for silence, it asks for depth, it asks for more aligned choices. And every time you listen to this inner calling, you strengthen your essence. This is how a true shift in values is born, one that doesn't depend on fads or trends, but on your own soul. The truth is, you are not alone. Thousands of people in different parts of the world feel the exact same way. an exhaustion with the superficial, and a search for something deeper. This invisible community, who recognize each other with a look, shares the same journey. What feels like loneliness is actually part of the cycle that prepares the transformed return. You are part of something bigger, and it's here that the reflection becomes inevitable. Could it be that this discomfort, this strangeness with the world, is precisely the sign of evolution? If you feel this, it's because you have already begun to walk the path. And the more you accept this sensitivity, the more it will become your strength. After all, every hermit archetype one day returns, bringing light to those still trapped in darkness. Throughout this video, we've seen how spiritual awakening transforms our perception of who we are and the world around us. We went through the initial shock, the discovery of energetic sensitivity, the profound shift in values, and the dilemma between persona and authenticity. We also explored the impact of psychic burnout, the importance of the hermit archetype, and finally, the power of the transformed return. Each stage reveals why so many people are silently disappearing from society. Now reflect. Have you ever felt this fatigue from upholding masks, from swimming against the tide of an unconscious society? Have you ever heard that inner calling asking for more silence, more authenticity, more coherence between what you feel and what you show? These questions aren't mere reflections. They are invitations to act, to transform your own life. The next step is to apply what you've learned. It could be a simple choice: spending more time in silence, seeking contact with nature, reducing stimuli that drain your energy, or investing in practices that align your mind and body. Small steps can lead to profound and continuous change. Remember, the silent disappearance isn't abandonment. It's a redirection toward what truly matters. So think. What is one action you can take today to align your life with your essence? What old habit do you need to let go of to get closer to your authenticity? And if this video sparked something in you, how do you plan to turn that feeling into real, tangible, and meaningful choices? If you felt this message speaks to you, subscribe to the channel. Here, we walk this path of awakening together, without masks and without judgment. Turn on notifications to continue learning, exploring, and applying every insight, and come be a part of this community that values consciousness, authenticity, and transformation.